Welcome to the St. Matthew's Episcopal Church podcast, coming to you from Northern Virginia. We're so glad you're here. Today, we hope our message inspires you to better know and share God's love. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and join our weekly newsletter, The Friday Flash, to stay updated on all of our events and services. Let's dive in.
If you recall, on Sunday, we suggested that evil can be understood on one hand as an intellectual construct, and another hand, it could be understood in perhaps a deeper view, it could be understood as an actual spiritual presence, an actual spiritual force in the world. But what we said is that for evil to make it into the world itself, so for evil to make it into the world, what has to happen is it has to enter into our heart or our brain, and so it impacts our body so that we enact evil. Without us, without our bodies, without our hands, without our minds, without our mouth, then evil never makes it from a construct, from a spiritual presence, into a destructive force in the world. With a little more time tonight, and not too much more, but a little more time tonight, we can be a bit more concise. And so the destructive processes that hurt and harm the world, they don't always come from without us, from what we might call evil. Sometimes they also come from our brain itself. And so, for instance, our best understanding currently is that things like an inclination towards addiction, things like inclinations towards depression, anger, anxiety, all probably have genetic or epigenetic components to them. And while they may need environmental triggers to set them off, they most likely have some basis here. But even so, if the basis is in our brain or in our DNA or our mind, however we understand it, it still has to pass through our body to make it out into the world. And there are still steps we can take to mitigate the inclination. So, just the simplest way to understand that is if a person has alcoholic parents, has parents who struggle with drink, they've a great likelihood they're going to have that inclination themselves. And so the smartest thing they can do is either not drink at all, because that's going to cut this process out, cut it off right at the start, or have a hard and fast rule that they absolutely never violate, one and done, right? And if you violate it, go back to point A, you got a problem, and do something about it. So just because the inclination is here doesn't mean it needs to work its way out into destructive behavior. And so what we said is that what Jesus does is that all the forces of the world that are so destructive, that hate and harm and hurt and so on and so forth, Jesus says, and we use the words of Gandalf when he, in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, when he faces the Balrog, a creature of untold evil, Jesus says, "Thou shalt not pass." And he sets a barrier. It keeps evil from making it beyond him, right? And the group of adventurers who are trying to set the world right, they're able to continue their mission, and Gandalf keeps evil from passing into the world. And so if we're looking to do the same thing, and I'm going to call this tonight, you can call it one of two things. One is we can call it challenge the process, okay, the process by which evil makes it from a construct or a presence into a reality in the world, or the process by which inclinations in our mind or in our DNA make it into reality in the world. We want to challenge that process. We want to say with Gandalf, "Thou shalt not pass." Or perhaps you understand it another way, if we're understanding in terms of generational legacies, ways that generations tend to pass on things that are hurtful and harmful and destructive, then we might understand it as disrupting the transmission, right? As, again, disrupting the transmission so that what's out there or up here doesn't make it into the world around us and doesn't hurt and harm and diminish the people that we care about. And if that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about challenging the process, disrupting the transmission, then there is absolutely no better model of how to do that than Jesus. And particularly Jesus at his trial, at his humiliation, at his crucifixion. I mean, this becomes the model for us of how we challenge this process as Jesus did. And say, thou shalt not pass, you shall not pass. You won't make it through me out into the world and into the lives of the people I care about and the relationships of people who we care about. And the first way that happens is in the word passion itself. And passion is a word that has actually been cheapened and sort of hollowed out, made shallow and superficial over time. We use the word passion today. We talk about being passionate. We often think about that which excites us or that which causes us to feel energetic. But passion, as it was originally understood, comes from the Latin phrase passio, and that's certainly what it means when we're talking about the passion of Jesus. It means that for which we're willing to suffer. And so, if there's something that we care about, but we're not willing to suffer for it, then we're not passionate. We might be enthusiastic about it, we might be excited about it, but we are not passionate. Passion, at least in the sense of what Jesus is talking about, is caring about something so much that we're willing to suffer for it. Jesus caring so much about people knowing how deeply they are loved, knowing how much they matter to God, about setting what's wrong in the world right, that he was willing to suffer and suffer deeply. And he suffers in three ways. Three ways that, again, if we want to challenge the process, disrupt the transmission, ways that we're likely to suffer as well. He suffered socially. He was rejected. And when we do this, when we challenge the process, when we disrupt the transmission, what we're really doing is we're challenging the status quo. We're disrupting the status quo. The way things are, the way things always been, the ways they've been for generations. This is certainly what Jesus is doing. That's why the world doesn't want him around anymore, because they want to do things the way they've always done, that they like them being done. The people in power want to stay in power. The people who have money want to keep their money. The people who don't have to serve other people but have people serve them want to keep people serving them. And so Jesus has got to go. And because Jesus has a different viewpoint, he is rejected by the masses. He's willing to be unpopular. He's willing to be unloved. He's willing to be rejected. And again, if we're going to do any of these things, we'll need to be that too. The second way that he suffers is that he suffers emotionally. And Jesus is lonely, particularly in this night. And this is one of the most telling portions of the Passion reading. And it's that point where he understands that he's undergoing this huge trial. And he understands that this is asking something that he's just not sure he can even carry himself. So he looks for the people who are closest to him in the world, the people that he thinks he can trust with his life, right? The three people who are close to him, and he says, listen, I'm really going through something. Come pray with me. I need you. I need you tonight, right? And they go out and pray, and Jesus is praying, God, if there's any way that I cannot do this, I really don't want to do this, right? I've already suffered a lot. I'd rather not. And he's praying so earnestly with such heartfelt feeling that the blood vessels in his brow literally break, and he begins to bleed. And while he's going through this, the disciples went to sleep. And Jesus looks at him and says, "Really?" And he shakes him awake and says, "Please, please. Can't you watch even an hour with me? I mean, won't somebody stand with me?" And he returns back to prayer, and he no sooner starts praying than they go back to sleep again. And Jesus looks, and it just becomes clear they don't get it. He is totally and completely alone. And again, when we're talking about challenging processes, disrupting transmissions, we're really talking about being willing to stand alone. We're talking about experiencing conflict and friction, because both of those things are necessary to challenge a process or to disrupt the transmission. And the final way that Jesus suffers is he suffers personally, in that he gives his life. He cares so much that he's willing to suffer to the point of giving his life. And that personal suffering takes the form of personal sacrifice, of sacrificing dearly, sacrificing himself. Of course, he began doing that long before he was ever crucified. He began doing that when he descended from heaven into the world and became incarnate and gave up his access to all of his godly privileges to be as human as you or as human as I am. But that continues to the point of the cross. And if we are going to change things, if we're going to make the world that is into the world that ought to be, well then for sure we're going to have to make some sacrifices too. And we're going to have to do some things differently. I like the way a man by the name of Patrick Lencioni, a guy for whom I have infinite respect, I like the way that he puts it. He says, Christ-centered people accept suffering as an inevitable part of the calling. Let me just read that again. I'll put the emphasis on another word. Christ-centered people accept suffering as an inevitable part of the calling. It's not optional. If you're following Jesus, then Jesus is calling you to challenge the process, whatever that looks like for you. He is calling you to disrupt the transmission. And for that to happen, you're going to suffer. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. I'm going to suffer. They realize, Christ-centered people who accept suffering as part of their calling, they realize that challenging the process, disrupting the transmission, is an act of love. And love, by definition, requires sacrifice. Now, it's not just suffering for suffering's sake, of course. There's a purpose in the suffering, and that purpose is redemption. Redemption of ourselves, redemption of the world. But here we're getting ahead of ourselves. We've got to wait 2 more days before we get to the redemption piece. Let me just conclude by making this practical in my own life. On Sunday, I quoted, as a way of wrapping all this, a person who did challenge the process, disrupt the transmission, Terrence Real, a guy, again, a therapist for whom I also have a lot of respect. I quoted him when he says that I am the son of an angry, depressed father. My father was the son of an angry, depressed father, and my children cannot say that they are sons of and he has 2 sons in their 30s. My sons cannot say that they are children of an angry, depressed father. And that means that their children won't say that either. And he says, and he's like stratospherically successful in the terms of the world, and he says, that is the greatest achievement of my life. I am the son of an angry, depressed father. And he was the son of an angry, depressed father before him. But the thing that changed in my father's life was that at 36 years of age, he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. He'd gone to church his whole life long, but it was more an intellectual knowing of God, about God out there, a social function that he felt like he was required to do. But it was at that point that with intentionality he said, I'm going to follow Jesus. And I'm going to develop a relationship with Jesus in my heart. And that changed him. It changed him in wonderful and delightful and marked ways. He never entirely got beyond being angry, at least sometimes, and being depressed, at least sometimes. I think that was just going to be a part of his life in this world till that life came to an end. But he was so transformed that you could genuinely say that he was a new man. And he created new structures within our family and new relationships and gave all of us a new legacy. And so, yes, I am the son of an angry, depressed father. I asked my younger daughter if she was the daughter of an angry, depressed man. She said, no, you've always been, very loving and supportive and so on and so forth. I asked my older daughter, and she said, no, that's too reductive. Which is to say, yes, but. And that makes sense because I learned how to be in this world from my dad when my dad was an angry, depressed man. So of course, that's how I am in the world. But my dad also gave me the tools in his own conversion to begin to be transformed myself. So that when I accepted Jesus on May 18th, 1973, kneeling at an altar as somebody led me in a prayer, much younger than my dad did, that would change my life radically. And so there was, yes, I think in the early years, at a time when I was angry and depressed, and everybody suffered for it. But the longer I walked with Jesus, and the more I gave the Holy Spirit access to my heart, and God's grace was able to transform me, the less and less and less that's been a part of who I am, a part of our life, a part of my family, so that my younger daughter never even experienced that. Now, if that can be true for me, then believe me, that can be true for you as well. I don't know that I'll ever get completely beyond sometimes being inordinately angry at really stupid things, that I'll ever totally beat depression. But that said, it becomes less and less a part of who I am, less and less a determinant in how I react and behave and view the world and relate to other people. And I believe that that can be equally true of you. But again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We'll come back to that on Easter. Look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you for listening. If you're in the Northern Virginia area, we invite you to join us for worship or any of our events. For directions, service times, and information about our online services, visit stmtts.org. That's stmtts.org. Until next time, go in peace and share God's love.